Arguably, one of the most one-sided matches in the Champions League was Borussia Dortmund versus Bruges, 3-0. But did we learn anything about the new look Borussia Dortmund from this match?
Well, you say one-sided. In terms of score, it was. They were quite lucky not to be behind by the time they opened the score in.
Yeah, Klopp had to make several serious saves, I thought.
And I think for that reason, we do learn some stuff from it, I think. That Dortmund aren't finished and that a good subs bench really helps.
I mean, significantly so. And it's not the first time the bench has helped Dortmund out this season as well. It's match day one that, there was a 30-minute cameo from a certain man who also came off the bench last night to great effect, and that is Bynoe-Gittens.
Yeah, he's done brilliantly. If you think he scored, we can say he scored 4 goals in 5 games, but he's really scored 4 goals in 2 bits of games. Really, that's what he's done.
He had 31 minutes in the first game, managed to score 2 goals.
Yeah,
and then last night he comes on again to.
Yeah, I mean it's 0-0 at 76 minutes, and at that point you think, well, not that Dortmund would be happy with a point because, of course, they arrived at Club Brugge thinking, right, we should win this game. But the way the game went, if they'd have got away with a point, you'd have thought, well, fair enough on the balance of the game. Because Dortmund started this game very well and then quickly got themselves in a situation where wherever they lost possession, they looked extremely vulnerable. And it's an interesting chat afterwards because Marcel Sabitzer was saying to everyone who would listen to him in the mix zone and all the broadcasters, I'm really not comfortable in my new role. He's made a sort of defensive midfield role, which is a bit weird really when you think Emre Can is in the side as well. And Sabitzer is someone, especially when you think of his excellent form in the second half of last season, where he's bombing into the box.
I want him box crashing. That's who he is.
That's exactly what he does.
He did it for Austria, he did it for Dortmund. It's who he is, and he excels at it. He's very good at it.
And Nuri Şahin was asked about this. If ever you had a question whether Nuri Şahin had the courage of his convictions as a coach, he was asked this question about Sabitzer. And do you know he's not that comfortable in his new role? And he said, well, he's told me 1,000 times, so yes. But I think it's indicative of the fact that not only have Dortmund done a lot of business, selling and buying and loaning out and what have you this summer, but this is still a massive work in progress. And I think they were excellent on Friday night for most of the game against Heidenheim, where they went temporarily top. Of course, Heidenheim were the previous leaders. And I think if you watch the highlights of this, you think, oh yeah, they know what they're doing, don't they? But it's just the bits in between. And I don't think we've moved to a point yet where Dortmund are controlling games. Now, of course, Dortmund are seeking not just a total change in personnel. They need a change in personnel because they need a break with how they've been playing before. Not under just Edin Terzic, but under the couple of previous coaches, where under Marco Rosa, under the back end of Lucien Favre, they can't get any tempo. And we think of Dortmund football as, well, probably because of one man in particular, we think of it as tempo, crash, bang, wallop, all that sort of stuff, don't we? A bit like you were talking about Sabitzer beforehand, actually. You could see him fitting one of those good Dortmund sides. Yeah. But Şahin has managed to get in more intensity into this team. Now, bear in mind, he had a bit of a head start because he was one of Terzic's assistant coaches. So he's been working with Gittens, and you can really see that, by the way, for the last 6 months of last season before he takes sole control in the summer. But it is going to take time to change from a team being almost totally passive to being a team that what you would imagine a Dortmund team to be, where they kind of grab you by the lapels.
Well, it's just like what we're talking about with Juventus, though. There's a similarity there in terms of they're trying to change away from that, trying to find a tempo, trying to find a level of intensity. And these clubs are in the process of it. So I know you said about Dortmund not controlling games, and they absolutely are not.
I mean, is the difference Motta is a better coach?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Motta is a better coach. Absolutely. And also, I think...
I'm more experienced at the level as well, I think.
And I think that Juventus squad is better.
Right.
As well. So, but in terms of Sahin, I wouldn't expect Dortmund to be controlling games right now. It is going to take time. It is going to, be a process of then they'll have to lose a few games, find out a little bit about themselves as well and where they want to be. And for these players, and like you said about Sabitzer, to understand their roles and how they help Dortmund move forward.
Is every Dortmund coach living in the shadow of the Dortmund that you alluded to a moment ago, which was the Dortmund of Jürgen Klopp?
Yes.
Every single one.
Absolutely.
Even after all this time.
Yeah, totally. And of course, they had this Tchaikovsky farewell game on the international weekend, a sort of farewell to Jakub Błaszczykowski, Kuba, and to Łukasz Piszczek, both teammates of Nuri Şahin in that team that won successive championships and under Klopp and won the double in 2012. And I think when Klopp came back to coach one of those teams, and I know everyone's seen the cute bit where Błaszczykowski, Piszczek and Şahin are playing against 100 kids, all quite injury-prone players. I'm thinking, I'm not sure this is a great idea. There's at least a couple of the directors up there going, I'm not sure if we're insured for this. But I think the joy that was around the club and that was in the stadium when Klopp was there is significant. And it's because of the way he sees football and the way he connects with the crowd, which, funnily enough, it's remarkable, really, that he's been able to do that at 3 separate clubs over extended periods. So he was able to do that at Mainz, he was able to do that at Dortmund, he was able to do that again at Liverpool. And that is why he is, one of the absolute greats of European football. But I think it's not just the football. Like, emotionally, they really miss him. They really, really miss him. And that's taken a while. Now, maybe it's a little bit tenuous to say, well, Şahin kind of represents that generation. Of course, he was only there for the first year that Klopp won the title in 2011. At the end of that, they're sort of there in Borsigplatz, where they always celebrate title wins. Şahin's done his ankle, so he's on crutches. He's 22 at the time, and as they're waving to everyone and lifting the trophy and all the rest of it, Klopp leans over to him and goes, "You're going to Real Madrid, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yep." And he's wearing like these massive sunglasses, so you can't like feel any of the emotion or anything like that. But I think it's quite significant because obviously Şahin is his own man with his own ideas, but also in that Klopp team in that first year, he's spiritually a huge part of it because he's a bit of a little terror on the quiet. But also the way that Şahin sees the game and dictates the game in this team that's all crash bang wallop. He's at the base of the midfield picking out the passes because he's got an incredible range of passing. So really, apart from arguably like Roman Weidenfeller, who's a kind of stuck to his line kind of goalkeeper, there's no one in that Klopp team that wins a title in 2011 who can see it better than Şahin. Yeah,
it is interesting. It's important, I think, to have somebody on the field as kind of a guide for what your manager wants to profess as well. I always think that's really, really key. I always used to thinking about when Atleti were at the peak of their powers, Simeone had Gabi in there. Yeah, I always felt like Gabi was him on the field.
Coach on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. And very important, very underrated. And I don't think you see it too much.
Do we reckon that's what he's trying to make Sabitzer into?
It might be, yeah.
I mean, because Sabitzer has actually got the passing.
Yeah.
I mean, you would miss that going late into the box. Yeah. Obviously, if he doesn't want to do it, it ain't going to work.
Yeah, but it is. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of football again. I mean, we've had little glimpses of what Sahin wants, and he did a great piece in the Players' Tribune, the coach's voice. So it'll be interesting to see as well what type of coach he turns out to be. And I think there will be a few people expecting, doing that kind of putting 2 and 2 together and going, he played under Klopp. He's going to want crash bang wallop football. But I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be a bit more measured.
I think it should be.
Yes.
Football has changed so much in the last 10 years plus. But he is, as we said, he's less. When we're comparing him to Thiago Motta briefly, he's a less experienced coach, Nuri Şahin. But having said that, he had a couple of years at Antalyaspor as the head coach. Now, especially at the start when they were in a lot of trouble, he came in there and a little bit like, not quite, a little bit like Xabi Alonso. He had his principles and he made them play their way out of trouble. So it's not like, right, lads, let's get everyone behind the ball because we've got a bit of an issue at the moment. He had his philosophy and he was determined to employ that straight away. Now, at Antalyaspor, there are limits. I mean, goodness, we've just seen Andros Townsend having the holiday of his lifetime while they lift their transfer ban and he waits to get signed a couple of weeks ago. But so there's a resource difference. But when Şahin quits a head coach's job to be an assistant to Edin Terzic, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I always felt that you don't come if you're not encouraged to believe there's not promotion prospects in the future.
No,
of course, that turned out to be maybe slightly quicker than we would have imagined because Terzic kind of run aground. But I think this idea that Şahin is kind of predestined for this job, I don't think that's complete nonsense at all. I mean, I remember I interviewed him ages ago and he told me that the night that Dortmund won the European Cup in 1997, where Lars Ricken, who's the current man in charge, scored that brilliant goal from the chip over Guirassy from miles out just after coming on as sub. Nuri Şahin told me that he and his brother, his parents went out for dinner that night, so him and his brother were just watching the game on their own, and they, with cardboard and foil, they made a sort of pretend European Cup, and they were like running around the front room, like lifting it above their heads and stuff. So look, this means everything to him. It meant everything to Edin Terzic, but he didn't have the tactical nous to get it through. Now, Şahin's got a massive challenge because they have had a few years of like really not joined up recruitment. So he's having to unpick that and sort of assimilate these new players. And Dortmund have just, done what like Bayern were caricatured to do like ages ago. They've gone to the team that have been better than them in Stuttgart and taken away Valdemar Anton and Serhou Guirassy by offering them twice as much money. So
if you can't beat them, get them to join you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in terms of recruitment, that is a long way from the strategy of peak Klopp Dortmund. Obviously, because they didn't have that sort of money at the time. But it's a different way of doing things. And whatever we think of Şahin and what he's got to do, it kind of needs those big players to really produce.
I think it needs those big players, and also as well, if they are going long term with his coaching, approach, which I think they are. This young guy coming in, and their assistant. Okay, I say the long term vision there. There's going to be have to be that support above him as well. The recruitment is going to have to be better, way better, because we've discussed on this podcast several times about Dortmund's recruitment falling off a cliff.
Yeah,
that is going to have to come back. They're going to have to find themselves there, I think, once again.
But they're in this position as well where there has to be a discernible player development. Because if I was a young player, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on OTC Dotun, if I was a young player, like hard to imagine, I know, but like say if you
the
are
player part or the young part.
Wow,
both. Imagine we are all like 18-year-old wonder kids, and you get a choice at the moment of Dortmund, Monaco, Leipzig. I'm definitely going to the one of the latter two. I don't know about you guys.
I'm going to Monaco.
Yeah, because I think, well, look at that tan. It's not going to look after itself, is it? I think you sort of look at it and you think they have got a record of developing players that continues to this current day. Whereas, of course, we've had Bellingham, we've had Sancho, and we're not just talking about players who come through the academy. Haaland, they've gone there because they believe it's the right step in development. Now, this is why Gittens is so big for them this season, because he is a player who's shown promise, but not quite developed as quick as we might have expected. Now, if they're going to A, turn him into a great player, and B, presumably sell him a couple of seasons down the line, a lot of that rests on Şahin. And already I think the early signs of development are really good. Now, on the other hand, if we're talking, so I think that's very important to Dortmund's future. On the other hand, if we're talking about getting the best out of those players that they have invested a lot on, and I know people will say, oh, well, there was only an 18 million release clause for Serhou Guirassy. The signing on fee was enormous.
Yeah.
The wages are enormous. The whole deal is meant to have cost Dortmund somewhere in the ballpark of 70 million.
I mean, that is ridiculous for Dortmund. I think that's way too much.
It's a massive risk. But already, and because like obviously so much relies on, can he stay fit, regardless of the form, etc. What we've seen in a game and a half of Guirassy already is a player who is not just a guy who can score goals in the Bundesliga, as we can see, and he will score goals in Europe too. But a guy who offers more of a presence than any striker they've had since Robert Lewandowski, which is massive. If
it's interesting because they've been through a few strikers as well. If you look since Lewandowski, the strikers, they've tried to replicate that. And Haaland as well. Sorry, they got Haaland. So since then.
And he was amazing, but he was never a presence in the way like Lewandowski was.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas I think the way that Guirassy makes the runs, scores the goals, links play, occupies space, genuinely likes fighting with defenders, all of those elements can put him in that sort of ballpark.
It also hints as well that Dortmund are thinking of impact this season. So as much as there's a long-term vision there with Sahin and a few of the other players that they've still got some very young players, they're kind of like, okay, we're going to give you some time. We're going to allow you to, put your impact, you put your spin on things. But we want a bit of impact now as well. And I think you don't make a sign like Guirassy without thinking that.
I do like this quote. Not sure what it's trying to get at from Bill's, the newspaper Bill's Michael Mackes. Apologies if I got the pronunciation of that wrong. After the game on Friday, he asked, did the cult coach, i.e. Jürgen Klopp, leave his match plan in Shahin's office after the Legends game? And I wonder whether that isn't another sort of sign that Sahin isn't completely convincing to the German press.
I think it says that for the first time in a very long time, Dortmund are playing exciting football. Not flawless football, but exciting football. And that is really important. And like I said, it's natural that they draw the lineage between Sahin, and we draw the lineage between Sahin and Klopp. Of course, he's his own man. But if they have just a little bit of that feeling, that means so much to the supporters of the club as well.